Good evening and welcome to Live United. Live United is an opportunity to talk and share about all the exciting initiatives going on in the Monadnock region that make a difference in the lives of our citizens. Today I'm fortunate to have with me Damien Licata. Damien is the Executive Director of the Monadnock Area Peer Support. Thanks for being with us, Damien.
Thank you.
And, you know, it's nice to have you here because there's been a lot of attention brought to mental health issues right now. And we're very aware of how much that impacts not only people's work lives and their parenting and just all the things that go on in your day-to-day life. And we're certainly seeing the impact now as the budget discussions are going on what potentially could be happening to mental health services.
Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about Monadnock Area Peer Support, because it's really a very unique, in some ways, approach to addressing the mental health issue.
Sure. Well, you know, peer support has been around a long time. We've been around since 1995, and just in this community alone. But it's been an evolving and a growing process for peer support generally, and also for our organization. But peer support is, I think, an adjunct to traditional mental health services. We're very fortunate to have Monadnock Family Services, another United Way agency in this community that provides the clinical services and the case management kind of services that a lot of folks need, and the support that a lot of folks need who deal with varying degrees of mental illness and serious emotional challenges. And peer support is not a clinical program. It's a peer program, so that what that means is that our staff and our groups and so forth are all led by people who have that lived experience with mental illness. Of course, our staff have all received special training in peer support, in a particular kind of intentional peer support. And so I think that what we're often asked, you know, so what kind of services do you provide at your agency? And usually, I think the answer to that is that we don't really provide services. What we do is we enter into mutually supportive relationships, relationships that have an intention, and we also create an environment in which those relationships can develop and form and develop and be nurtured. So, so the idea is to utilize these peer relationships in order to move forward. That when we talk about an intention, that's the intention we're talking about, in order to move towards something.
So does each person that participates in the program become a mentor to another person?
Potentially, yes. I mean, that's the idea, is that not necessarily a mentor, but somebody who can provide and receive support from another. And so, so it's not necessarily hierarchical. There's not really, I mean, obviously in our staff, our paid staff, there's a sort of built-in sort of difference there in the sort of power dynamics. But we talk about those, where we try to, as much as possible, establish mutuality within the relationship, so that those kinds of that sort of hierarchical, I'm the expert, you know, and I'm going to bestow upon you my expertise. That's not, that dynamic isn't so much present as how can we learn together from each other? What sort of things how can we help each other sort of identify where we want to go and what we want to be that's apart from any diagnosis we may have. You know, oftentimes people who have been in the system for a long time come to define themselves in terms of those diagnoses. First thing they do when they come in and introduce themselves is tell you what their diagnosis is. And we're not so much interested in that. We're interested in what you experience, and we're interested in who you are aside from that, and what kind of life do you want to have. And that's what we support each other in trying to figure out how to get there.
So let's talk about some of the different things that you have going on within the organization, because I know you work with different groups, you work in different environments out there, and you have some new, I believe, respite.
On the horizon, yes.
Yes, initiative. So let's
Yep.
make sure the public's really aware of what's happening.
Okay, so yeah, we do have a full calendar of events that go on. We have support groups of various kinds. Some have are tied to specific areas of need. We have a hearing voices group, for example. We have a group for folks who have experienced trauma, and we have a group for people who have had difficulties or negative experiences, perhaps dealing with the mental health system and how they can support each other and being able to best utilize the system and get the most out of it. Well, we have a depression bipolar support group, which meets. Actually, we have 2 of those going on concurrently because there's such a great demand for that group. And then we have other groups that are activity based. We have a writing group. We have an arts and crafts group. We have a gardening group that's we've established beautiful gardens in collaboration with Antioch, which has a community garden program. I just saw in the paper that they're going to be doing something with CNS to establish workplace gardens, which I think is great. And it's the same kind of thing. We worked with them, and we set up these large boxes in 8 foot long, 3 feet wide. There's 6 of them on our site, and we grow vegetables, and we're going to have a lot of additional flowers this year. The gardening group is really one of the groups that people really are excited about, and we've had a lot of success with. So there are, and we do trips. Folks go to interesting places in the area. We've even gone as far as the aquarium in Boston and places like that. We do a beach trip, at least once a year, maybe twice. We'll go to Hampton, and so it really is a community that we have established there. That a very welcoming and open community, a community that's very easy to become part of, and one in which you can really find your own way and your own place.
Part of what I'm hearing that makes it really special is there's that emotional support aspect of it, but there's a social aspect of this.
Very much
and
so.
I think sometimes groups can become so disenfranchised, individuals. And, you mentioned at the top there that people are often defined by their diagnosis. And I think when it comes to mental health issues, we oftentimes see people feeling like they're isolated because of that diagnosis.
Right.
And here's an opportunity to really feel that sense of belonging and to be part of something that's not only emotionally supportive for you, but also that has that, sounds like some fun.
Yeah, well, Kelly, that's exactly right. I mean, and that's important. I think that, part of the negative aspect of a diagnosis is the stigma that comes with it, and the stigma that around any type of mental illness or even addiction as well. And there are a number of people who will come to our center too who have that dual diagnosis. But being able to, that stigma is often internalized. All of the negative things you've ever heard about individuals that have some sort of mental illness, when you're given a diagnosis, you now apply to yourself. And so it's a place where people can come where there is none of that. There's no judgment about, because you have a diagnosis. Like I said, we don't really even talk about diagnosis very much. And it's very freeing now. You can start to say, oh, yeah, there's, it's not some, sort of global judgment about me as a person because I have this diagnosis. There's a lot more to me than that. And so.
Now, do you find that most of the folks that are part of the groups there stay with it a long time, or is this something that if somebody's sort of just temporarily in need of some support can come into?
I think it's both. I think that there are a lot of folks who will come and get what they need for a time and move on. Sometimes they'll come back again. Sometimes we don't see them for a long time. And that's not a bad thing. We actually want people to move on, to expand their lives, and that's the whole point of what we're doing. So there are some folks who do, see us as a regular and more or less permanent part of their support system and of their lives, an important part of their lives. But even for those folks, they add on many other things as a result of being part of our community that they would not have risked doing before.
So you mentioned that there's going to be a new initiative on the horizon.
That's right,
here,
yes.
A new program.
That's right. We're very excited about this. We've been working towards establishing this for a long time, for years actually, and that's crisis respite, peer-run crisis respite. And this is intended to be an alternative to hospitalization, short-term hospitalization, or utilizing other emergency kinds of services, the emergency services, of course, that's offered over at MFS, or the emergency room in many cases.
Cheshire Medical.
Yeah, at Cheshire Medical. And so the idea is that not everybody who's in an extreme emotional state needs to be hospitalized, but many are simply for that reason, because there is no alternative in this community. There is a crisis respite that's long established in Claremont, New Hampshire. They've recently added, the state has recently added one other in Nashua, and that's been operating now for about a year and a half, I think. And but that's been it. And but it's been very successful in other parts of the country and in other states. In Massachusetts, very successful. And so we've been wanting to bring this to Keene for a long time. So what it's going to entail is that some folks who may still end up in the emergency room may get referred to us, but many others will either self-refer once they get used to the service being available, that they will no longer have to present in a certain way in order to get into the hospital, which is often the case. You need to be able to be a danger to yourself or others. And even if you're not feeling that, but you are feeling out of control in some other way, they have to present that way in order to get in. That's not the case to be able to stay in the crisis respite bed. And you can stay in the bed for up to a week. There's 24-hour staff available, specially trained, again, peers to work with, to be there to support the individuals who are in that space, to help them sort of figure out what happened and how that happened and how to, maybe prevent that from happening in the future. So, and they have access to the full program at our center because it's on site. So we currently have one bedroom already set up and waiting. It's been waiting that's dedicated to the crisis respite program, and we'll be. But we may be, by the time we open, we may be actually opening with two. We're hoping to open with two.
So that was going to be one of my questions, your capacity
right.
To work with this. So, which sounds like it's really filling a significant gap out in our region. Now, will Monadnock Community Hospital also be referring people into?
Absolutely, yes. We'll be getting, making sure that that anybody who might possibly be in contact with folks who could utilize the respite bed will have all that information and be able to refer folks to us. So we got a lot of support from the community when we applied. The money that's going to be supporting this comes from the state. We are under contract with the Bureau of Behavioral Health to provide services, and so in addition to the United Way, a large part of our funding also comes from the state. And so they have remarkably, really, considering the budget climate, agreed to fund our crisis respite program for the coming year. So So in our application for that funding, we had elicited support from a number of people in the community, and from law enforcement, the chief of police, and from the sheriff Riera, and from the hospital as well as MFS and crisis services in particular, and just a number of folks who are very much, supportive of having this come to the community. So I anticipate that we are going to be very much in demand.
I would anticipate that as well, and when I think about it, does fill a significant gap, but it also seems like it could provide an opportunity, again, for that person who may not need the intensive insurance covered, or non-insurance covered
Right.
mental health care, but really needs that respite, really needs a supportive environment on a temporary basis to get them through what may be going on. So it sounds like a really important initiative for the Monadnock region.
And it's absolutely no charge for the individual. None of what we provide has any cost to the individuals who benefit from it.
I think that's important to know. Now, if somebody, is there some age limitations, however, to the respite?
The respite, just like our full program, is for adults 18 and over. That's the only criteria.
So if an adult was in need of, whether it be respite care or more information about some of the services you're offering, how would they reach out to you?
Well, they can certainly stop in at our site on 64 Beaver Street. We would be happy to, show them around and explain to them our program and provide them with any materials. But they can also, we have a Facebook page, which they can, just, search under our name and you'll find it, Monadnock Area Peer Support. We also have a website, Monadnock Area Peer Support. Actually, it's monadnockpsa.org is the actual address. So you can find us there. And you can give us a call. Just give us a call, 352-5093. And any of our staff would be happy to provide you with any information you like. As I said, you could come by and, you could make an appointment if you wanted to, but you could just drop in and just sit down with staff if you want. You can also just drop in and just hang out, see how it feels.
And if a person was interested in volunteering or in donating directly to your program, how would they go about doing that? Can they reach out and come visit the location and see the work that you're doing?
Yes, they can, and they do. We have folks that from the community who are interested in seeing what we're about. They heard about us from our newsletter, which is another place to find information about us. The newsletter goes out all around various sites in the community, and we email it to a lot of folks and mail hard copies to a lot of folks. If anybody wants to get on that list, either for the electronic copy or the hard copy, they can also just give us a call, say I'd like to get on the list for the newsletter, and it's as simple as that. But anybody who's curious about us is welcome to contact us in the same ways, and we'd be happy to give them, whatever time they need to learn all about us.
So I would like to actually talk a little bit about some of the budget crisis that we are encountering now here in the state, because it will become a crisis for the Health and Human Services, certainly.
Absolutely.
You mentioned that the impact won't be quite as severe, it sounds like, for your particular service. However, I am aware that for the community health centers and some of the initiatives that you collaborate with and work with, that this could have tremendous impact.
Absolutely could have a tremendous impact. And I know that one of the things I think that maybe, protecting us a little bit in peer support is the fact that we are a very cost-effective service. And I think that folks are catching on to that fact at the state level. But also, we provide a community-based service that is very much the emphasis, I think, when they're looking at funding for mental health services in the coming budget. Services that have a community basis and that are integrated into the community are the priority, and some of that comes out of directly out of the lawsuit that we recently went through with the DOJ, who mentioned in more than one place in the settlement peer support and the peer support agencies. So that also is I think we've benefited from having that more prioritized than it's been in the past, certainly.
Well, when you think about it from an ongoing support basis, it seems critical.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, cost effective. We still have those acute care crisis issues that have to be dealt with,
Yeah.
and that this is not designed
Right, and there are services
to
that
address.
that Monadnock Family Services provide that are absolutely essential, and they are at capacity, beyond capacity already. So any thought to me of cutting budgets for those services will have a direct and potentially really harmful impact on the community.
It's interesting because a lot of people talk about, well, people should be getting better. When you think about the dual diagnosis in particular, people talk about with substance abuse, with mental health issues, well, why aren't they getting better from these services? And I think people don't oftentimes recognize that we often in our lives need ongoing support around maintaining our well-being. When you think of cancer, for example, you may go into remission, but you still need support systems around you. Yeah. Mental health and substance abuse are very similar in that they are a disease and that, they require ongoing care.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, and there's no question that there are individuals who definitely require that level of ongoing care. And I think that I believe in recovery. I certainly believe in recovery. But I also think that it's important that we look at how we define recovery and what does recovery really mean. Recovery doesn't necessarily mean, as the word implies, that you are returning to some prior state. I don't think that that's necessarily realistic in every case, and I don't think it's necessarily desirable in any case. I think that what we want to be thinking about is what we're moving towards. It may be something very different from what we were before or what we had before. It's about growth. It's about dealing with what you have and about moving forward. And so that, to me, is what recovery really is about. But to do that, we need all kinds of supports, of different sorts. And so I think that we're all capable of doing far more than we realize. I think that anybody who has any kind of mental health diagnosis is probably far more capable of growth and of enriching their lives far more than people realize. And so that's, I think, the where we fit in. I think that we open people's minds to possibility and not to this limitation of a diagnosis.
So this would probably be a great opportunity. I'm wondering if you have a story you could share.
A personal story?
A personal or a story about somebody that you serve, or
God, well, there's so many stories of folks who have come through our agency or still coming there who have made tremendous progress and move forward. But I can think of one in particular who was spent many years in and out of hospitals, many hospitalizations before finding the right sort of combination of treatment and support, and her connection with intentional peer support and with our agency has made a huge difference. She ended up being on our staff, worked for us for many years, and has now gone on and is now working at MFS, actually, as a peer specialist there. That's one example of how somebody can, this is something she would never have imagined for herself before. And so that's one that stands out for me as a real success, but there's certainly been many others, and in many other ways in which people have just simply, there's a you can see a before and after point for so many folks where prior to their engagement with our services and with peer support in general, there was a history of regular hospitalization and utilizing emergency rooms and so on, and after to that, becoming less and less over time, and so there's definitely a lot of instances where I can say that there's been a huge impact.
So one of the things I'm curious about, because we hear a lot about this now in our culture, is stress and its impact on mental health, and whether you're seeing any people coming in more with stress-related mental health issues, because I know I'm part of the Healthy Monadnock initiative as well, and one of the things we've been talking about is we have a little bit higher rate of stress, indicated stress here in the region.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the stress that folks experience, who we see, have to do with economic stress. I think that there's no question that there's a whole constellation of social problems that come with mental illness, and disability doesn't pay all the bills. It's definitely keeps you at well below poverty level, and that is definitely a high stressor that a lot of folks deal with, and I think that we can see a direct, correlation between the amount of stress somebody's under and the amount of difficulty they're having generally emotionally. And I think that oftentimes when people become completely overwhelmed with, not being able to pay their bills, not knowing if they're going to be able to pay their rent, being, imminent homelessness, any number of things like that, that's when they end up going to the emergency room. And that's not necessarily, what they need. What they really need is some support around that, some creativity, some creative problem solving with another person, and some reassurance that that they're not alone in what they're dealing with.
I was just thinking as you were sharing that really here's a perfect example of where the respite care that you're about to offer could come in.
Right.
Because when people are feeling overwhelmed like that, rather than having to go to that extreme of hospitalization or having to tell a story that may not really be what's going on so that they can get service.
Right.
And that's one of the frightening things about the system right now is people have to actually come in and really almost present themselves in a way that may not be really factual for them at that moment.
I think what oftentimes people, what they really need is in a sense a timeout. They really need to sort of like step out of these immediate stresses of their lives. These, the bill collectors or the family stresses or whatever it is, and they need to just be in a different environment, to just be in a safe place, to feel like, okay, I can have some room to breathe and to think, and that's very different from I feel unsafe, I need to get into the hospital, I need medications, I need all these clinical services. When in fact that may not be the case. But that's what they end up getting because that's the help that's available.
Now, somebody coming into respite care, could they continue on their job?
Yes, absolutely, yeah. I mean, they're free to come and go as they please. So if they are working, they can come into respite and go, to their jobs. They're welcome to, go into town, go to whatever they want to do, go to the store, and come back. They're encouraged to spend as much time as possible at the center, and encouraged to go to groups that we think would be helpful for them, and to interact with the other members and the other folks who are there. because part of I think when somebody ends up in the respite bed, part of what they may have been lacking is some kind of ongoing supports. And so oftentimes people come into the respite bed and that's their first engagement with peer support. And so it's an opportunity for them to plug into a whole network of supports. So we try to encourage folks to establish that kind of connection and relationship there, and of course that means spending time there.
Mm-hmm. That would seem very, very important to really build that support system into your life and kind of get through whatever's going on for you.
Then it's more than just a place to sleep.
Right.
And just while I'm on that point, I do want to point out that if you are homeless, we really can't take you into the respite bed, because the chances are much greater that you would end up not having any place to go from there.
Right.
And we can't have people long term in the respite bed because there'll be a great need.
And that's an important thing to note. I was actually going to ask about that, because you mentioned that it could be up to a week. And I'm assuming there's an intake process to this, that you're actually screening people and checking in with them really around what their need is.
Yeah, and the screening process is a part of it is about that. It's about making sure that they are really appropriate or can take advantage of the staying in the respite bed. But it's also about getting to know the individual, so that while they're there, that we can give them the kind of support that they in particular need. They don't just come there and plug into the same program that everybody else there does. It's really about personalized support for what they need. And so the intake process in the interview is something that is really about that. It's about getting to know the person and how we can best support them.
And I would imagine that some of these folks would be the people that are part of your services already, and that they just may get into that overwhelming moment in life and just need that break from it.
Our members are really happy to see this coming, the folks who utilize our services. I mean, a couple of them have gone to the Claremont program, but it kind of defeats the purpose of helping people to stay in their community. They feel disconnected when they're there. They're taken out of not only the peer support community, but their community in general, and so it's disorienting. And so, yes, folks who regularly come to our center, I'm sure will be utilizing this as much as anyone, and the same folks who come to our center are also, in my opinion, overusing emergency room and the MHU hospitalization.
So let's talk about outreach, because we've talked about some of the services being provided within the Beaver Street location.
Yes.
But I think you also do some outreach work. So let's talk a little bit about that.
We do. We do a support group in Peterborough, excuse me, that happens once a week.
I'll let you go ahead and
I'm going to have a little water.
It happens to me all the time under the lights here because they're a bit hot.
And I'm talking too much. That's an indication I'm talking too much when I do that. So we have that group that meets every Friday in Peterborough. We utilize the space at the River Center there, and that's been very enthusiastically received. We did a luncheon presentation for providers in the area to let them know about it, and they were also really excited to know that was happening. So that's moving along nicely. I facilitate a group at the jail once a week, which has also been. It depends on. We started it out in one block there, and it seemed to work really well. People were coming to it on a regular basis, but it was a block where there were somewhat transient population, so they would come and go. So now we're going to move it to a block where these are sentenced inmates that are there for a longer term, and with the potential of being able to establish deeper, longer term sort of relationships with them. But it's remarkable to see these guys come in very, very mistrustful and disinclined to share anything personal, to appear at all vulnerable, to talk about their feelings at all, and to come to realize that if you talk about what it is that can get in the way of them feeling safe, and how we can make sure that the space that we're creating is going to be a safe space for them, eventually, they start to be able to talk about those things that they don't feel comfortable talking about back on the block, even one-to-one, because they're afraid of being overheard by somebody else, and there's just it's not a safe environment for them to do that. So I think it's a really important service, and I've been really felt really privileged to be in the room to when those kinds of conversations happen.
Now, I believe that's been happening with the male population there.
So far, it's just been with the male population, where we are working on getting a qualified facilitator for the women's, to go on the women's unit as well, the women's block. But right now, we don't have that. But it is something that we're working on.
So some exceptional services that are being provided through Monadnock area peer support. Mm-hmm. Is there anything else that you really want the community out there to know?
Well, I think it's important that the community realize, and I think that the hospital is coming to realize it more. Certainly, the Community Mental Health Center, MFS, is beginning to appreciate it more. Is that peer support is an essential part of mental health services, and should be integrated into any services that folks get. I think that's a really important thing that people need to understand, is that what we do is unique to mental health services, that it's nothing that anyone else provides, but I believe it's essential to people being able to move forward. So I think that's the most important thing.
I really want to note that, because the Monadnock region is fortunate to have received a grant that Cheshire County government is helping facilitate. Mm-hmm. And Dennis Calcutt is the project director for that initiative. And that's to develop a different kind of system of care around mental health wellness. Mm-hmm. And I know that Monadnock Area Peer Support, Jude, participates mm-hmm. with that group, really yep. bringing that peer piece into that initiative.
Exactly.
But we are fortunate to have this planning grant right now here in the region. Mm-hmm. And I encourage you, population, to really think about how you can be involved with this, because mental health touches us all, whether it be in the workplace, with a family member, a neighbor. And there's different points in our lives where we may experience our very own, whether it's stress-related, but our own mental health issues. And this is an opportunity for you as a parent, you as a teenager, believe it or not, to actually be involved with this initiative. Any service providers, but to really develop this web of service and really think about how we want to plan that out. So that's called the system of care, and you can reach out to the United Way. We can get you more information on that. You can reach out to Damien, mm-hmm. certainly about that. Yep. I also want to remind the public that if you have questions about the services being provided by Monadnock Area Peer Support, you can reach them directly, and I'll have Damien repeat his contact information. But I do want to highlight that if you can't remember that, you can contact the United Way here in the Monadnock region or call 211. And when you call 211, they can refer you directly to Monadnock Area Peer Support.
That's
so
right.
Damien, one more time, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just say that you can call us at 352-5093. I didn't mention that we also have a warm line available for people who can call from 5 to 10, 7 nights a week, and be able to talk to a peer operator, trained peer operator, about anything. You don't need to be in crisis to use it. And so that's the same number. Again, 352-5093. The website, the website is monadnockpsa.org, but you can find us if you just do a Google search and say peer support Keene. I mean, it will come up in that search, right up near the top. So we're not hard to find that way. But there's that website. We're on Facebook. We're at 66 Beaver Street, and right here in Keene. If you don't know where that is, give us a call. We'll give you directions how to get there. But we're not hiding. We're out there. We're easy to find.
And it sounds like there's volunteer opportunities.
Yeah.
If people want to come in and maybe assist with things like the garden and other programs that are going on. You have a wonderful writing program. I read some of the
in the newsletter.
Oh, it's beautiful writing.
Yeah.
That's stuff.
It is really amazing what comes out of that group. And if you have we also have that arts group, and if you have a particular talent that you'd like to share, we have guests who come in and do those groups all the time as well. So there are certainly opportunities to be able to volunteer.
So, Live United is about giving, volunteering, advocating. Here's a great opportunity to do all of those things. Opportunity to give, whether it's your time, a donation directly to the center, especially as this new respite care gets put into place. Mm-hmm. An opportunity to advocate. Mental health services are potentially facing a longer-term cut at the state level, and certainly at the federal level we continue to see challenges. Right. And at a local level, we can speak to it becomes more and more difficult to fill that gap. Mm-hmm. Because the burden is being placed at the local level. So you have an opportunity to give.
Right. And we're seeing our population utilization going up and up every year now, and as well as geographically going further and further out. We provide transportation to come into our center in the morning, and go home again in the evening, in the afternoons. And but it's becoming more and more expensive to provide that service. We now need a new van, which we have to replace. The vans, we put a lot of miles on those vans, and the gas costs and so on. So it's, as the need becomes greater, obviously the expenses go up, and the funding doesn't always go up along with them. So we welcome any support from the community.
And we certainly recognize that as the United Way, that gap becomes bigger and bigger at the local level as the need increases, the demand for service is there, and people are trying to fill those gaps, and we are having the gap passed down to the local level to really fill that need. So, opportunity again to give, to volunteer, and to advocate for both our mental health services and for organizations like Monadnock Area Peer Support. Damien, I want to thank you for being with us.
Well,
You're a fabulous guest, and such an important issue for us to continue to be aware of out in the community. Look forward to having you on the show again.
Thank you, Kelly.
And audience, I thank you for joining us tonight, and remind you to give, to volunteer, to advocate, to live united. Thanks for being with us.